Hey YouTube, RicoKnows here. Going to talk to you guys about the NFL draft. If you guys didn't know the deal, I have a series going where I talk about every single pick in the 2024 NFL draft. So I'm going by every single team. I'm making one video per team. I'm going alphabetical by city. So if you want to see all the previous teams being done, just go to the playlist here on YouTube, or you can go to TikTok, look at the playlist, NFL Draft Review, and I think it says Review and Assessments. So 2024 NFL Draft Review and Assessments. Here I am doing a review of the Cleveland Browns draft picks. Shout out to them. And yeah, Cleveland Browns. I love the picks for the most part. I didn't like the first one in my call, but outside of that, they're really highly productive RicoKnows type of draft pick. So let's go down and talk about it. In the second round, the Cleveland Browns, with their first pick, 54th overall, they take Myles Jr. This is a defensive tackle out of Ohio State, and I don't think he's highly productive. I get it. You needed a three-technique defensive tackle. You needed a guy to just plug up some gaps, occupy offensive linemen, and don't let them get to your linebackers. I'm with it. I understand. Myles Garrett's the sack master. But for me, I would have much rather you traded up a little bit and got Chris Jenkins. He got taken off the board about 4 or 5 spots ahead of you, and Chris Jenkins is a big upgrade for me from Myles Jr. Remember, in the second round of this draft, there were 7 defensive tackles taken. 7. And Myles Jr. was the 7th one taken, meaning you just took the last good one. You took the last of whatever was left. You just look in and you're like, okay, we'll take a defensive tackle, because the next defensive tackle that came off the board was Jowon Carter at 95, I believe. 95. We're talking about 40 picks before another defensive tackle is taken. That means you took the last one. It might have been a reach at this point. It probably wasn't a good pick. That's the way I look at it. Draft value-wise, I didn't like the pick. Okay, below him, Zack Zinter in the third round. You take a guard who broke his fibula and tibia against Ohio State. So he broke 2 bones. He should be ready and back for the next season. I like Zack Zinter. He's a great offensive lineman. I don't know if you needed guards. I don't know if you needed interior offensive linemen or anything like that. But that just tells me this might have been the highest rated player on your board when it was time to draft. Because, you know, teams usually draft their team needs. But when it's time for them to draft, sometimes they look around and go, yo, is this guy still on the board? Are you kidding me right now? Are you shitting me around? Ashton, am I getting punked right now? I'm telling you, Zack Zinter's a very good offensive lineman. I like the pick. Then in the 5th round, we skip all the way to the 5th round, you have Jamari Thrash. I've been a Jamari Thrash guy for 2 years. If you watch TikTok, I've been gassing him and telling you guys how great Jamari Thrash is. If you looked at my transfer portal rankings, I had Jamari Thrash as one of the highest rated. I want to say it was top 10 transfers, because I just knew how good he was. One of the nation's leading receivers back in 2022 while at Georgia State. And then he transfers to Louisville to prove that he can do this thing and leads the team in every receiving statistical category. Dominant, despite the quarterback play being somewhat terrible. But I really like the Jamari Thrash signing. I think he can play. I love the way he stops on a dime. Some of his routes are just crisp. He loses defensive backs while running his routes. I like everything Jamari Thrash does. He is a little undersized. A little bit. 6 foot, 190-ish. So I get it. Whatever. Speaking of being undersized, Nathaniel Watson, Mississippi State. This is a young man that led the SEC in tackles and tied them in sacks. Like, this guy is really good productive-wise. I want you to think Ivan Pace Jr. with a little more street cred, right? Last year, I was telling you guys, my draft portal ranking, my NFL draft rankings, I had Ivan Pace Jr. in my top 10. I had Ivan Pace Jr. all over my favorites list. He went undrafted, and I was screaming at the TV, telling anybody who will listen, you got it wrong, you got it wrong, you got it wrong. I've assessed Ivan Pace Jr. He's an NFL player. And thank goodness he caught on as an undrafted free agent. Well, I'm going to tell you, Nathaniel Watson, I don't have the same conviction, right? Being 6'2", 230, he's slightly undersized. They probably want him closer to 250. But, man, he's productive. He gets tackles. He gets sacks. He's a good football player. Played at the highest echelon and performed and showed out. I like Nathaniel Watson a lot, and I think it's a good pick. It's a very RicoKnows-esque pick, right? I really like that. So shout out to him. Next, they take Myles Harden in the 7th round. Myles Harden played at South Dakota, and I was lecturing somebody on Twitter about this just a couple of days ago, actually a couple weeks ago. A young man wrote on Twitter, and he said, I know my worth. I'm D1. And he was going from FCS in the transfer portal, and he thought he should be playing at the FBS level. And I told him, like, you know your worth, but you are an FCS caliber player if your only offers are FCS. If your only offers are FCS, that's what you are. And if you get a late FBS offer, they don't really want you. You're a backup plan. So in my discussion with that young man on Twitter, I said, you need to go the Myles Harden route. And I told him about Myles Harden. This is a guy who's been all conference all 4 years, a stud at the FCS level. And what he did was he didn't transfer to an FBS school. He stayed at South Dakota. And every time he got on national TV, he balled out. Every time he played an FBS team, he came to play. So in the season opener, when he's getting an interception that leads to a touchdown by picking off Brady Cook in Missouri, yeah, that's real noticeable. That'll get NFL scouts' attention. This kid shows up in all the big games. He's on national TV playing against South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, the national champs. He had 2 playoff games in the FCS, played great in both of them. Like, that guy showed up to play every time the TV was on. Great player. I love it. And for the Browns to go out and draft high character guys, hardworking, I love football guys, that's the right caliber of player. I don't know how they're starting to evaluate their players differently in previous years, but this year they went out and got high character guys. They really did. And then Jawan Briggs, right? The easiest thing to do. A team captain, spent his first 3 years of college at Virginia being a leader there, then transfers to Cincinnati back in 2021. When he showed up, they went to the playoffs, right? Luke Fickell and them boys brought him in, and he stayed with the team and became a leader of this team and changing their culture through coaching changes. It didn't matter. I'm going to do this damn thing. So I really like Jawan Briggs. I think it's a good pick. Defensive tackle. You obviously needed to address defensive tackle. I understand he's a long shot to make the roster, but I think he's a good player. I'm pulling for every single one of these draft picks. They're RicoKnows types draft picks. I'm pulling for every single one of them to make the final 53. I really am. And I know it's a long shot, and I'll get excited when they sign a practice squad because I get excited about that stuff. But the Cleveland Browns are amazing, bro. I like the way they drafted. They went out there and drafted the way I would if I was picking players. I might have traded up a little bit earlier just to get a little bit better defensive tackle instead of settling for the 7th one in the 2nd round. But it is what it is. Your friends don't know, but Rico knows. Hope you guys continue to watch the whole series. I'm breaking down every single draft pick of the 2024 NFL Draft. Peace.